Hey everyone, welcome to this celebration of Gogo's life. We're going to start in a couple of minutes, so if you can just turn your phones off and that'll be great. Thanks. Hello and welcome, everyone, to the celebration of the life of Derek Anthony Watling, or Tony, as most everyone called him. For those of you who don't know me, my name's David, and I'm Tony's eldest grandchild. My father, Ray, being Tony's eldest son. With me here, and I'd like to invite her up at this point, is my cousin Grace. And Grace is Tony's middle granddaughter and daughter of Peter, Tony's youngest son. I'd also like to welcome those joining on live stream, my brother James, who is in the USA, who we'll hear from later via video link. Also Edith Holsworth, a close family friend, Cynthia, Natasha's mum, who are both in Australia. Also Tony's cousins Bob and Carolyn Martin in the UK, as well as any others I may have missed. I also hear that at Ferguson Retirement Home, some of the staff and residents are joining with us as well, so welcome. As a disclaimer on the program today, the service has been run by our family entirely, so expect a lot of crying. We all had a special relationship with Tony and have had to put something together on short notice. Just a month ago, he was celebrating my little sister Katie's wedding, and now we're here celebrating his life. So I'd like to share a few things about Tony, or as I call him, Gogo. So I'm told, although I was too young at the time to verify, as the eldest grandchild, I found it easier to say Gogo than Grandad, and the name stuck. My siblings copied me. One of my lasting memories of Gogo was just over 2 weeks ago, the night before Grandma's birthday, when he invited me to pray with him. Gogo and Grandma would pray for everyone, family, friends, every night before bed. He prayed for numerous people, and then I asked him if I could pray. I thank Gogo for the great example of marriage and family values that he instilled in me. It was a special time, and everyone was crying, and I always remember that. We then all had a shot of Bailey's. Chess held a special place in my relationship with Gogo, and often when I visited, we'd play 2 or 3 games. Over a span of nearly 30 years, I played numerous games of chess with Gogo. At the age of 14 or so, I beat Gogo for the first time, and when he was in his late 70s, that was when he was in his late 70s, and even just last year, he was still very competitive, still beating me from time to time, which is very impressive at the age of 97. Another special memory I have of Gogo is every year, on every birthday, and every Christmas, I, along with every other grandchild, would get a card with a specially written poem, spell-checked by Grandma, of course, printed and taped inside. We would then each read our poem out loud, thank him, and he would always be immensely pleased with himself. He loved writing poems later in life, and I've written one in turn which I'll read later in the service today. I'd now like to hand over to Grace.
Thank you, David. I've just got a few words to share as well. My grandpa was a man of simple taste, while his wife, our grandmother, loves nothing more than a punnet of fresh bluff oysters. Grandpa was happiest with a bowl of peanuts, some ready salted chips, and freshly cracked walnuts. I am 1/5 of Grandpa's grandchildren, although I am actually the only one who ever called him that. As David mentioned, Grandpa's passing came as a bit of a surprise to us all. Now you might be thinking, at 97, how surprised could we be? But he really was an incredibly active man, still playing chess with his family, as he mentioned, and some special carers in the home as well. Still writing poetry all the time, and still arguing with staff, and even considering establishing a union at the old folks' home. Grandpa really never stopped. He was always looking after our grandma and ensuring that he kept up to date with all of his relatives' lives. Grandpa always said that he and Grandma said their prayers for both of their boys and their families every night. He was faithful in prayer and deed. While Grandpa's passing is very sad, I don't come here sad today, because he lived his life more fully than most, and he left the world surrounded with so much love. What more could one ask for? While I fully expect there to be a lot of tears shed today, mostly I believe that our family is so grateful to have had him in our lives as long as we did. It's often easy for us grandchildren to see Grandpa and remember the glasses, the hearing aids and the walkers. but he was a man full of vitality and vigour, and a lot of opinions. Grandpa and I sat on opposite sides of the political spectrum. He was a proud unionist and a staunch supporter of his mates Winston Peters and Helen Clark. He would often call me a damn Tory, to which I would reply, "Whatever, you crazy communist." And he would always rebut, No, I'm a socialist." Grandma would often tell us off for arguing over politics, but he would always say, "Oh, shush, it's all good fun." I remember one election night, probably over a decade ago, the whole family had gotten together at their place in Wainui to watch the results come in. We were all hoping the results would go one way, but Grandpa was sitting there proudly, the sole man backing his horse, with his Labour Party rosette firmly fixed on his chest. Now, it was only less than a month ago that Grandpa celebrated the wedding of his youngest grandchild, Katie. How special to have had one final family celebration. Now, this first song that we're going to sing today was sung on their special day. So please be upstanding for the song, The Goodness of God.
I love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails me. And all my days I've been held in your hand. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. 'Cause all my life you have been faithful, and all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You will lead me through the fire, and in darkest night you were close like no other. I've known you as a father, I've known you as a friend, and I have lived in the goodness of God, yeah. And all my life you have been faithful. Oh, and all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God, yeah.
Just before Ray's presents the eulogy, I just wanted to say a few words as well. It's quite a few years back now. I was making my regular calls to check in Wainui, and after a while I asked after Dad to hear he'd had a scare with his heart. It was after a few more questions I discovered that he'd been taken to hospital in an ambulance. Mum's response, "Oh, Tony just loves the attention." She was right. And today, all attention is on Dad and his extraordinary life. Having a group this size, you can be sure he would have prepared a verse. So if you came here thinking you'd hear one of his rhymes today, you won't be disappointed. And if you're tired of them, bad luck. Although Dad could take a hard line on things, he did see himself as a peacemaker. And although he could be very tough, he was also a big softy when it came to sentimental things. Unfortunately, to all of you, that trait is passed down to each generation. So again, excuse us if we reveal too much of that part of him today. Big softy gene. Dad always said his life was an open book. He was extremely honest to a fault. You couldn't assume he would take your side on every situation, but was definitely a good person to have on your side when your principles aligned. Also, with that honesty, you couldn't tell him anything that you wanted kept secret. But he did have a lot of stories of his own, and likely many of them that you may not have heard. Thankfully, he wrote them all down, both in book form and in a collection of poems. Now, Ray's been sifting through all these writings and has collated the Cliff Notes version, the highlight reel, eulogy, as we'll call it today. But so really, I'm here today to support my big brother, deliver those stories. And so with no further ado, I'll pass on to Ray.
There you go. Thank you guys, thank you all for coming today. I don't know whose drink that was, it might be mine, might be not.
And the microphone.
And the microphone, okay. Right, sorry about this, guys.
It's that big softy, Gene.
Big softy. No, not just quite yet, I'm okay. Dad was born on the 25th of September 1925 in Iloilo, the Philippine Islands, as the firstborn child of English parents Herbert and Ethel Watling. Why the Philippine Islands, you may think? Well, it seems that his father worked for the Asiatic Petroleum Company and was based in Canton, which is now called Guangzhou, for many years, and he was selling kerosene for the lamps in Asia. His sister, Lorna Marie, was born 3 years later in Xiamen, in China. So he doesn't look Filipino and she doesn't look Chinese. They both say they're English. That's another story. They also had a younger brother, Thomas Stapleton Watling, who tragically died at 2 months of age. Of his father, he writes, Dad writing of his father, he was a very active man with a military bearing, never looking backwards, and loved by all who knew him. My granddad's older sister, Auntie Rose, was a nurse all her life and was actually honoured as a Dame of the British Empire, although she never used that title. His mother, Ethel, was born in London and her working life acted as a police typist in Scotland Yard, London. After 21 years trading in China, Herbert was a wealthy man and he brought the family back to England, where they bought a lovely thatched roof house in a very picturesque part of Devon. Complete with 7 acres of land, 2 stables for horses. Grandad was not only a businessman but also a keen inventor and had a number of patents. Grandad was then introduced to another business venture. This time was in France. So they moved to France. He had an office in the Champs-Élysées and it involved a patented preparation that was put into car tyres that prevented them from deflating from punctures. Like our tyre pando nowadays. This is probably 1920. There's probably no cars. Oh. Okay. This worked well, and Dad remembers seeing his father hammering 6-inch nails into car tyres and pulling them out without any apparent loss of air. It seemed like the Watlings were on the pig's back. And Dad was enrolled in a top junior school, Lycée Pasteur. All classes were in French, and Dad found that quite difficult. The onset of winter ended the good times. The preparation in the tyres froze, and the business that Grandad had financed was threatened with massive repair bills from hundreds of customers. He repaid them all. The family returned to England as poor as church mice, and when they got back to Devon, had to sell the main house and they converted the barn to live in. For electricity, they had a petrol-powered generator which charged acid batteries so they didn't have to run the generator at night. Grandad invented a self-wringing wash mop, which he patented, and the whole family were involved in its manufacture, and they made ends meet. Later, the family ended up moving to Carshalton, the suburb of London. As a young child, Dad's only playmate was his sister Lorna, and he admits to 2 occasions where he may have put his sister's life at risk. On one occasion, he took his father's walking stick gun out to go rabbiting. I don't know how old he was. I think quite young. He went out with his sister. They never saw any rabbits, but as they passed the farm gate, he thought it would make a good target to aim at. Lorna was a fair way away and he fired. and then he asked Lorna if he had hit the target. She said she was too far away to see, and suggested to him to do it again when she got closer and could see better. Shotguns have a spray of lead, and all Dad could say was that he missed her. On another occasion, an uncle had given them a little toy soldier with a parachute, and they were throwing it out of the attic window 3 stories up and watching it glide to the ground. Dad then had an idea that Lorna could have a lovely flight down. They would use one of their mum's best sheets, and Lorna could hold on 2 corners in each hand and jump off. The snag was, to use one of Dad's words, the snag was that Lorna wanted 2 hands to get into position on the window ledge before jumping off, so her bright brother thought that if he tied each corner of the sheet to each leg of a small stool, then Auntie Lorna could sit on the stool, and that would do. At this point, Lorna hesitated and suggested they should have a trial run without her sitting on the stool, which they did, and the stool shattered on landing, and Dad wrote, so they could not go on with the experiment. At age 13, Dad had to leave school as war was approaching, and his school field was used as an anti-aircraft station with gun emplacements on it. Dad started work as an apprentice instrument maker. He made loudhailers and gun control switches for battleships. Raids on London happened every night, and he and his sister slept under the sturdy kitchen table most of the time. When he reached 18 years old, he was enlisted into the army and was trained as a craftsman. One of his training pieces was that he was given a length of 4-inch mild steel, and he was required to make a 3-inch square with a square to fit inside it, then a hexagon inside that, then a small triangle within that. All the shapes had to fit inside each other with minimal light showing, and each shape must be able to be rotated. We've still got that. It's 80 years old. He did it when he was about 18. It's quite cool. And it's all done just with a file, a vise and a hacksaw. He came top in his class. Here's one we prepared earlier. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think you can see that, but you can have a look later. Yeah. Okay. During the war, he was involved in maintaining, repairing and sustaining tanks, vehicles, motorcycles, or basically anything mechanical for the war effort. He spent time in Egypt also during the war. Once the war was over, he came to New Zealand, and jobs were lined up for them. His was working with Robert Burns, who started precision engineering in Kent Terrace, which later moved nearer to the airport. They originally made Sten guns for the New Zealand Army, but after the war turned to office furniture, filing cabinets, milk tokens and number plates. And you will have seen precision stuff around. Dad's job was to make a machine that would stamp out car number plates. This reduced car theft, as plates could be seen by police as out of date, and they changed with each issue. He worked there 11 years. He left over a principled row, which anyone who knows him can see that. And this is the row, which I managed to get information on. 2 years after Burns died, I had a dispute with the works manager. Dad was the foreman in charge of the tool room. It was only a little matter, but I felt so strongly about it that I said I'd quit if the works manager didn't apologise to him. And this is what it was. The tool room was on a tight schedule to catch a delivery date Dad had promised to do. A problem occurred at the press shop where washing machine parts were being made, and Dad was in the press shop for the best part of the morning fixing it. When he got back to the tool room, there was the works manager using his staff, rearranging the tool room so that it would look good for a camera crew that were filming something about accidents in workshops. They deliberately spilled oil on the floor, and Dad was hopping mad. It was also that during that time, in the evenings, Dad was teaching apprentices fitting and turning at night school at Wellington Technical College, and he did that for 10 years. And after leaving Precision, he went on to teach full-time. I don't know how long that was for. In that time, he taught we'll talk about it a bit later on, but he had about 40 apprentices over his time, and at the Technical College, he trained Len Southwood's, at least one of his sons, possibly two. and they went on to do big things too. He writes in his memoirs, the 24th of May 1962 was very important because that was the day Joan Stewart married me. She was the nicest thing to come out of Wanganui since a certain baker, Pop Stewart, sold the best bread in town. The ceremony took place at Kelburn Presbyterian Church and reception was at the Skyline Restaurant, which overlooks Wellington Harbour. He writes, I don't know what this is about. The bride was so slow getting away that I helped the next door neighbour do a bit of work for the garage they were putting up. I'm not sure if that was after the service and before they, I don't know. But anyway, that's what happens, and that doesn't sound weird to us. And he carries on. Our car was an Austin 12, and when we got to Sanson, we thought the motor was overheating, as there was a funny smell coming from the engine. We pulled into a garage to investigate, and found that not only had our friends put stones in our hubcaps. Does anyone know what hubcaps are? Actually, everyone's old here. Everyone knows what hubcaps are, except the front rows. But Bill Johnson, who was his mate, had strapped a large flounder to the radiator. And he said, if we'd known it was fresh, we would have eaten it. Their final honeymoon destination was Whangarei, at a big game fishing lodge. They went out on 2 days on the launch Kitty Vane, and the captain of the ship was a young Sid Going. They only got one bite the entire time. Great honeymoon. Mum and Dad bought a rundown cottage in Apu Crescent in Lyell Bay, which they completely re-roofed, re-walled and re-lined. I was born while they were living there, and Dad's mum and Dad were living in a bigger house in Island Bay. And so when Mum and Dad started having children, they actually swapped houses. So we ended up with a house. And they had Dad's handiwork. Peter was born a little while later when we were in Island Bay. Mum and Dad also lost a child between us halfway through, Brian. After teaching, Dad went to work for Hollyoaks. It was a relation of the Prime Minister at the time, making central heating equipment. Dad was also the union rep of the factory and a first aider. And so you can see where that's come from. Here's another one of his stories. One year there was an extra hot summer and temperatures in the factory were almost unbearable. Bill Johnson appears again. Bill Johnson, the works manager, and I asked Noel why, as experts in air conditioning, our workers had to work in such terrible conditions. Nothing was done, but they said improvements were promised for the following year. Well, the next year came, and one unbearable morning, they could take it no longer. With Dad as the ringleader, the boys decided they would all take the rest of the day off and go fishing. Next day, the boss had them all in his office, and he blew his top, and he asked Dad why they were not at work the previous afternoon and why he hadn't been told. Dad replied, "Your office is nice and cool, and anyway, I didn't think that you wanted to go fishing." His next job was at Standard Engineering, where he made the tools for Philips electric shaver boxes and stamped out the hardboard back panels on the Philips TVs. So that was tools that he did. So there wouldn't be many of those around now. About this time, there was an advertisement in the paper advertising for the best toolmaker in New Zealand. Dad, who wasn't normally arrogant, sent his CV in and he waited. At the time, they were living in Island Bay. One weekend, there was a knock at the door, and the man standing there introduced himself as Frank Brugger. Long and short of it, he got the job, and Dad moved the family to Wainuiomata in 1970, where the new factory was being built. Dad worked his way up to toolroom supervisor and was responsible for the design and building of all the tools in the plant. And it's lovely to see Kevin here today, who was one of his apprentices. Oh, and Robert, is it? Oh, no. Oh, no, sorry, that's good. Okay, anyway, Kev's here. Thank you. That's so lovely. I think Kevin is over 65. Are you, Kev? Sorry about that, but even his apprentices are retiring now, which I don't think he's retired. Okay, but I guess that's what happens when you're 97. I remember him taking me to his work on Saturday mornings if he wasn't working, and we would weld up my car or motorbike muffler, or at home on his lathe, we'd turn up rings and a piston for my Victor scooter, or case hardened tappet shimmers for my helmet imp, or spray paint my Triumph Herald in the garage, or my 504X traffic bike. Dad worked at Bruegger's for the remainder of his working life, which was good for me, obviously, and he retired at 60 years of age. That's what you did back then. He writes, "When I reached 60, I could not leave work quick enough. It was not that I did not like the work, but here was a chance for me to do all the things that I wanted to do." Frank shouted Mum and Dad a 2-week all-expense-paid holiday in Rarotonga as a parting gift, and that was the first time Mum had left the country. She was nervous about flying, but enjoyed it when she got there. Dad's retirements were intense and sequential. He threw himself completely into his interests. He ramped up the pace of his model boat building, which had always been a hobby of his. Hey, Robbie. Then there was hydroponics. I don't know if we've got a picture, but I don't know if that cabbage, but he went into gardening, he grew a cabbage that was in the paper, it was massive, so many kilos. Then he went into bone carving and greenstone carving, and then wood carving, astronomy. Oh, did I mention pottery and ceramics? Then he got into fossils, and he contacted a certain Professor McKee, I think associated with Victoria University, and he was given the job of trying to remove fossilised bone from rock. For each of these projects he did, he got books out of the library, and he spent many hours in the garage, and he contacted anybody who knew anything about the subject. Hey, Andrew. Sorry, is it my old mate? Oh, I forgot, did I mention chess? Yeah, he helped start up a chess club at the local community centre to encourage young kids to have activities after school, rather than roaming the streets. He did this for years. He was in his 90s then. I played chess with him for 50 years. I was looking back.
I never bet him.
Pete never bet him. I did. But he would still be beating me in the last few months, yeah. Which is actually quite a thing. Every waking moment he was doing something. His final flurry was into poetry, and he wrote a weekly column for a local newspaper for many years, again up till he was about 95. All the things he did like that, he never got paid for. He just did it like he liked to help people and use his skills where he could. I just put a few other thoughts. I hope this isn't going too long. I just remember watching boxing on TV in the 70s, and Muhammad Ali and George Foreman and all that, and Pete and Mum and I would be watching him watching the boxing, and he'd be sitting on this chair and he's going, and we'd watch most of the thing watching him. It was just, he was so engrossed in whatever he did, and that was just typical of the way he was. He didn't waste anything. I've got a funny story about a yellow raincoat, which we quite haven't got time for that, but yeah, he basically, Mum threw something out secretly, and he went rummaging through and found it and said, "Oh, Ray, this would fit you," and he brought it back home again. He had a strong sense of justice. He led a strike. He actually was involved in a mutiny in the army. He nearly got course-martialed, and the firing squad was mentioned. And he always supported the underdog. His garage was something to behold. Edwards would understand that. They've got a symmetrical garage, but it had nothing like what Dad had in his. In fact, one of the things they did have was a big cast iron upright piano. It was in the garage, and one day Mum decided she wanted to go and play it, and she couldn't find it. There's actually a book that we got given, or some came, so there's Blokes and Sheds. Dad's not in it, but I looked through this and I wasn't impressed at all. There was off his rafters, there was things hanging off those, then there was things hanging off the things that were hanging off his rafters, and there was a kitchen sink. And a moose head. It was a 14-pointer. He was very proud to say, which used to be in the... Okay. Working bees made him happiest, and that's why we're sort of doing this a bit of a working bee today, as a family. He taught me everything, how to fix things, usually by thinking outside the square. In all my years, I don't think I've ever heard him swear or drink to excess. I remember him taking me to ride a bike and motorbike. He taught Boys Brigade with Len Holsworth, and he helped Pete and I with our school studies. often under duress. He could be a hard taskmaster, but he was always fair, and he certainly softened as he got older. Yeah. Oh, good. Has anyone visited him in the home? Okay. Okay, Dad would talk to anyone. He befriended a rather odd chap at a funeral of one of his friends, and he gave him a lift home to his house in Newtown. The relationship continued, and Jack Wales ended up spending many, many weekends over years at our home as we were growing up. I remember his one-eyed, pig-headed political views, and the funny thing was that he shared the same birthday as Piggy Muldoon, who he detested. He always thought Grace would become Prime Minister one day, and she still might, although it'd probably be for the Tory party, which he couldn't stand. I don't know if many of you have viewed him over the last couple of days, but he looked unbelievably like a Tory from the... Yeah. Unbelievable, with a tie. It was amazing, from the House of Commons, in a suit today. He was always very generous with his time and skills to help anybody, anywhere. However, he was not so generous with his money, but like me, and I remember one Mother's Day, Mum got a plastic soap dish that fits on a bath tap as her only gift. Another time, Dad bought Mum a new vacuum cleaner. That was quite a good present. But when visitors came, Dad would say, "Boffs, show them your new present." And they were expecting, I don't know what they were expecting, but anyway, when they came in, she'd have to come in with her, show them their vacuum cleaner.
I think I have to interject here. My dad did the same for Mum one year.
Yeah. Yes, it was a toilet roll. Yeah, okay. Dad made lifelong friends in Wainui, particularly the Holsworths and the Edwards' family next door and the Schmeigs over the road. He was also involved in Grey Power and served on the committees of Grey Power and the Waimara Medical Centre for a number of years. Dad was refreshingly politically incorrect and health and safety averse and a one-of-a-kind type of person. Actually, not one of a kind. I think I take after him, and I'm going to miss him a lot.
Come away with me in the night. Come away with me and I will write you a song. Come away with me on a bus. Come away where they can't tempt us with their lies. And I want to walk with you on a cloudy day in fields where the yellow grass grows knee high. So won't you try? Come away with me and we'll kiss on a mountain top. Come away with me and I'll never stop loving you. is for you to come away with me in the night. Come away with me.
Just yesterday morning, they let me know you were gone. Suzanne, the plans they made put an end to you. I walked out this morning and I wrote down this song. I just can't remember who to send it to. I've seen fire and I've seen rain. I've seen sunny days that I thought would never end. I've seen lonely times when I could not find a friend. But I always thought that I'd see you again. Won't you look down upon me, Jesus? You gotta help me make a stand. Just got to see me through another day. My body's aching and my time is at hand. I won't make it any other way. Whoa, I've seen fire and I've seen rain. I've seen sunny days that I thought would never end. Seen lonely times when I could not find a friend. But I always thought that I'd see you again. Been walking my mind to an easy time, my back turned towards the sun. Lord knows when the cold wind blows, it'll turn your head around. Well, there's hours of time on the telephone line to talk about things to come. Sweet dreams and flying machines in pieces on the ground. Whoa, I've seen fire and I've seen rain. I've seen sunny days that I thought would never end. I've seen lonely times when I could not find a friend. But I always thought that I'd see you, baby, one more time again now. Thought I'd see you one more time again. There's just a few things coming my way this time around now. Thought I'd see you, thought I'd see you right away now.
I guess that's me. I thought I wasn't going to cry after the welcome. I thought I was okay. I hadn't seen that. There was Uncle Pete put that together. Thanks, Uncle Pete. I'd now like to invite up my beautiful sisters, Lauren and Katie, to share a couple of poems that Gogo wrote. Both come up.
I feel like it's pretty brutal to have to go after that video. Cool. I picked a poem that's about 9 lines because I think that's as much as I'd get through, at best. This poem is called Wondering. When I sit and wonder what to write, I sit and then I think, are my poems very bright or just a waste of ink? I think about this and I think about that. My mind will race around. Are my brainwaves very flat and is my thinking sound? While they read, I do not know, but I can watch their face, and if a smile begins to grow, I know I've won the race. That's all I had to do.
And my one is magically way longer than that. So this is a poem from his book called The Old Story. At 80 years or more, some energy you lack. You find your feet are really sore and have an aching back. If you try and have a run, you soon are out of puff. When seated, you enjoy the sun and find you've had enough. The day goes by just like a flash, those things you've got to do. Go to the bank and get some cash. Don't pay your bills, they'll sue. 2 meetings monthly you must go. Grey Power members chatter. We have great speakers, all do know, and talk of things that matter. Must shop and get a nice meat pie, new bread and milk for tea. How very quickly time just flies for everyone but me. There is much more I have to do, some letters I must write. Since then the grass around me grew, it is a dreadful sight. I try and do the best I can, I shrug and have to say, what I cannot manage now, I'll do another day.
We are now going to do a hymn called Abide With Me. If everyone can be upstanding, please.
Yeah, g'day. How's it going? So, as has already been said, in later years, Gogo wrote a lot of poems, and I thought if he left school at 13 and I went to university and stayed till 21, I could probably write something too. So this is what I came up with this week. It's called Gogo, which, as I said before, is how I refer to him, because that's all I could say when I was these guys' age. And I wrote it in a sort of form that I think fits with his style. When I sit and think to write of all the things I could say despite the constant chatter of poop and snot, it really happened quite a lot. I think of floating boats and chess. I think of garage full of mess, where bolt and screw of every size, he'll search until he finds the prize. Years before was quite a scene. In 62, king captures queen, bishop announces man and wife, and so begins the rest of life. In marriage years of 61, 2 boys, 5 grandkids, more to come. Noah James followed Bo Ray, promise of more another day. Grandma's night in sweatpant armour. Last month watched sister Mary Farmer, dressed instead in Sunday best. Same thing now, yet laid to rest. A man who loved, a man who prayed, a man who toiled, a man who stayed, a man who loved his KFC, a man who did his best for me, a man who lived to 97, a man who now resides in heaven. So that's me. I'd now like to welcome James, who's done a video message all the way from the USA. He's also written a poem, so if you could play the video, thanks.
I am sad I
Little
cannot
bro.
be there with you all today, but have written this poem to honour Grandad, or how a lot of us know him, Gogo. In loving memory of Gogo, our poet dear, a grandfather and great-grandfather so sincere, whose words brought joy and brought us cheer, from Wainuiamata to distant lands, far and near. A toolmaker's craft he owned with pride, a poet's soul he could not hide. His words a symphony of heart and mind, a treasure for us all to find. His time in the army, a chapter bold, with stories and memories still untold. His courage and strength and inspiration, a testament to his determination. In 1950, he made a new start, with Joan by his side, hand and heart. The love a bond that spanned decades long, a love story that was pure and strong. As a grandfather and great-grandfather, he shone, with love and guidance all his own. A beacon of wisdom, a guiding light, his presence a source of pure delight. His poems a reflection of life's rich hues, of love and family and nature's cues, of dreams pursued and battles won, a legacy that will never be undone. For over 60 years, he cherished Grandma Joan's embrace, a love that time could not erase. Their bond, a beacon of devotion, a love story that inspired emotion. Though he has left our earthly realm, his poets and stories at the helm. A poet, a toolmaker, a loving husband and father, a cherished grandfather, and even great-grandfather. So as we gather to bid him adieu, let's celebrate his life, his journey too. A legacy of love, chess matches, and more. Gogo, our poet, forever in our hearts to the core. Thank you.
You can see that the poet Jean is going to continue on in this family, I think. We would like to take a few moments. If anyone else would like to share some words, some memories of Grandpa, you're welcome to come on up now and share some stories. Don't be shy. Anyone interested in saying a few words? Noah James might say a few words. If no one would like to say anything, there is a final poem that was discovered that Grandpa has written, which is going to be shared now.
We found his poem this morning in one of his many little folders filled with poems. So appropriately, he's written his own last words. It's on the screen just in case I can't read it all, so please read along with me. Looking back on my life so far, there are lots of things that come to mind, and each one is like a little jewel that helped to shape me on the next part of my life. I have no regrets in the way my life has gone, and having Joan by my side has kept me in good order all these years. Our children have done us proud, but now we are growing old. Some things have come to us because chasing adventures need energy, and that seems to be in short supply. Sorry. Life is a path that each person must go alone.
And each adventure is another little jewel that is so precious, and sometime in the future I will be going on to the biggest adventure of my life that will go on for eternity. And he signs it at the end. You say it for me now. Okay. So Dad W, as I called him, or Gogo Watling, as our family called him. When Gogo was in hospital, he was there for 8 nights, and every day or night Ray and I would visit, and the children, and he would ask us to say the Lord's Prayer before we left. Every day he would be so determined to complete it perfectly, but he started to forget lines each time. He was frustrated, but he continued until we would get it right. So in honour of our Gogo, our father-in-law, father, grandfather, great-grandfather, if you're able to, could you please stand and say it with us all now? Thank you. I'll lead it now. So if you're able to, don't feel pressured, but okay. She's right, just let her sit. Just let her sit. She can sit, eh? She can sit. Okay. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive them that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. And his last time he would just keep saying, for thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory. Just keep saying the power and the glory. And it was really lovely. Thank you, guys.
On behalf of our grandmother Joan and our families, we would like to thank you all for being here with us today to celebrate the life of our grandfather Tony. Whether you have joined in person, online, or sometime in the future, thank you for your support. We also ask that you all continue to wrap our grandmother in love as she continues on without Grandpa. Shortly I will welcome my husband Jonathan up, who will commit our grandfather to God's keeping. Following this, the family will carry Tony out to his final journey. Please follow us outside and add some flowers or one of Grandpa's chess pieces to the top of his coffin as you say your farewells. Once we all wave him off, let's return and enjoy some refreshments, and make sure if you have a cup of tea, two teaspoons of sugar. We're going to continue to share memories and celebrate Tony's incredible life. Thank you. Jonathan, if you'd like to come up.
Just before we do that, Grandma's going to come up and place a rose.
I've just taken 3 flights to come back from Chicago and got here 40 minutes to spare, so it's such a pleasure to be able to be here with friends and family today. For those who were privileged to know Tony when he was younger, you will have seen in person what many of us today have only seen in pictures, that he was a handsome and vigorous man. And I think we know Grandma wouldn't have had him any other way. But we all clothed in bodies that are condemned to age and decay. This is the birthright of our carnal flesh. We all know of Tony's sharp mind and wit. I've frankly never met someone who had such a global interest in politics. It wasn't uncommon for when we would visit him that he would say, "Jonathan, come sit beside me and tell me about the situation," and then go on to recount an election in Kazakhstan or some crisis in Guatemala that I'd never heard of. But of course, in step with his tangible body, Tony's intellect and mind were also eventually condemned to pass. So we ask, is that all that he was? A vigorous body and a sharp mind. A man who lived a long life, but after 97 years is now forever gone. How unbearably heavy and dark that would be. No, today we stand here as those who grieve, but not those who are condemned to grieve hopelessly. We could say almost that what we see here is the shell, the nuts in heaven. By faith, Tony received the offer of Christ for life, life which has triumphed over the grave. We accept that from dust we come, to dust we must each return. But we proclaim also that death has been swallowed up in victory. Therefore we say, death, death, where is your victory? Death, where is your sting? Together, for those of us who hold this faith, we can give thanks to God who gives us life through our Lord Jesus Christ. This is because more than body, more than mind and heart, we are each created to know the infinite and eternal joy of God by the grace of Christ, who for our sake has taken death and reduced it to little more than a shadow. Yes, today we weep, but we do not weep hopelessly. Yes, we shed tears in this passing hour of death, but we entrust to the keeping of our God the eternal life of our brother. Take heart in the truth that Tony does not weep. Christ has taken his tears. He is not in pain. He does not yearn. He does not fear. We claim that he has died, yet really, he is more alive than ever. Now we mix together hope and joy and faith with our grief, and commit to our good Father, both our brother in his saving faith, and ourselves once again to this hopeful truth, life eternal. Amen.
Show me that stream called a river. River Jordan, that's the old stream that I long to cross. Old Man River, that old Man River, he must know something, but don't say nothing. He just keeps rolling. He keeps on rolling along. He don't plant taters, he don't plant cotton. Them that plants them is soon forgotten. But old Man River, he just keeps rolling along. You and me, we sweat and strain, body all aching and racked with pain. Told that barge, lift that bale, you gets a little drunk and your land's